Let's call this meeting to order, the Port General meeting on October 22nd. And does anyone have any changes to the agenda? No? Okay. Public comment. Do we have any public comment? People, nothing seen, nothing heard. We'll move on to the consent calendar. Do we have a motion for the consent calendar?
I move we approve this consent calendar.
A second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? No? Okay. Motion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries. Correspondence and presentations. Paula, it would be great if you could give us a little intro into our friends at Oregon Coast Aquarium and their expansion plans.
Yeah, so as you may see on your packet, I have included a staff report, and which I also included some correspondence from the city, and a section where the city actually talk about the project and some conditions, and a section from our lease which talks about portions of the lease regarding repairs. So it's repairs and improvements, and what the requirements of the port, what the requirements are in order for the aquarium to do major repairs. And the city actually required that in order for them to move forward and approve their permits, that the aquarium first obtain a consent letter from the port before they would move forward. With that said, I invited today Carrie Lewis from the aquarium here to do a presentation, let you know a little bit more about what they're intending to do. This presentation is the same that was provided to the city council as well as the city planning. So Carrie, would you please introduce yourself?
Carrie Lewis with the aquarium. Hello, everybody. Get acclimated to this thing. Thank you very much for letting me show our... There, I got it. Okay. So what I'm going to show you is some architectural renderings of our project. So just to back up a little bit, we did a strategic planning session in 2015, and it took about 3 years, and out of that came, and we pulled our members, we pulled our stakeholders and donors and members of the community about the aquarium and the improvements that they would like to see. And so out of that came improve the visitor experience, give it a facelift, because obviously we're 27 years old and it's time to do a little remodeling. My goal was not to increase the footprint, but to improve it. We need to be mindful of staffing and make sure that these are all sustainable projects. That being said, so the aquarium owns part of the property, city owns part of the property, of course the port does. So we've broken the project down into 3 phases. I'm going to be talking about 2 phases. The highlighted areas, you'll see the top is the main aquarium building going down, and people here I'm sure are familiar with the aquarium. The 3 main galleries, and then the passages of the deep exhibit down on the bottom right. That area will not be affected at all by any of these changes. So this following slide, this slide is the one I want you to take a look at. So the green area is the property that we lease from you. The yellow area is a property that we lease from the city of Newport, and then we own the blue areas, which is the beautiful industrial building in the park, and then the beautiful parking lots. So, of course, the improvements will be in phase 1 to part of the port property and part of the city property. And I will show you what is affected in phase 1, which will be the new ticketing addition, which is on port property, and it will also be landscaping at the arrival, And we are expanding somewhat our nature play area, otherwise known as a playground. We're going to be improving that area, and we're putting in a new amphitheater. So phase one, and we are actually beginning phase one, permit pending in November. We would like to be working with Tim Braxling, a local contractor. We'd like to keep, I didn't mean to cut my back to you, but
Oh, no,
if you can hear me.
to them.
So phase one includes everything that's on the port property. So you'll see the arrival, you'll see all the way out to the estuary, and of course the ticketing annex, some improvements to the lobby, the cafe, the coffee bar. Phase two, we would like to be starting funding, permitting, it will be in 2021, hopefully, if the funding is in the bank by then. So these are some renderings of the arrival. You'll notice the pylons that have been there since the beginning will stay. We're just going to be improving this. We're going to be bumping it out a little bit so it's a little bit more ADA accessible for our visitors that that have mobility issues. We're going to be doing some landscape editing, otherwise known as tree trimming, because all of this, of course, as you know, is overgrown and it has it's becoming a little bit of a challenge. We're working with a glass artist in Portland to do kind of like a beach glass sign. This sign will be illuminated. It kind of has that look of water, and it's quite beautiful. One of the complaints is when people come into the aquarium, there's not a grand entrance. They don't know where the entrance is. No matter how many signs are out there, people just don't read them. So we're going to make it a little bit more accessible. Again, this is on port property. We are doing some lobby improvements, and I'll show you. We are also changing the entrance of visitors to the aquarium. Instead, as you go into the aquarium now, you take a sharp right and go by the gift shop. We would like our visitors to exit through what we call the bay windows. So take those bay windows out and have our visitors enter that beautiful vista which looks out towards the bay. We'd also like to put in a little headwaters exhibit, talk about salmon. Of course, all of this we're working on a new master interpretive plan as well. This is the new ticketing edition I was talking about. We will not be having a green roof. This was a great idea, but not for here. So there's some minor structural changes. This is about 925 square feet. If you've been to the aquarium, you know we have those big, beautiful sculptures in the entryway. We are removing those and relocating them somewhere else throughout the grounds. Part of the visitor experience is when you walk in. I mean, obviously the aquarium wasn't meant to see as many visitors as we do, and so there's a pinch point when our visitors walk in. So the visitor complaints, member complaints, is that it's just too congested there. And so we decided to remove the ticketing out, have it separate, have that transaction be done, and so people enter the aquarium, they don't think about money anymore, everything is, it's a little bit less hectic. So we will be having 3 dedicated admissions area with 1 member station towards the right over there. And of course, all of this will have lower windows, so it's easier access for mobility issues, people with mobility issues. Replacing all of the main entry doors as well. Any questions? Just go ahead and fire away if you, okay. Lobby enhancements, obviously, again, on port property. We're opening this up a little bit. As many of you know, we do a lot of evening events at the aquarium. This will increase our capacity for doing that. Putting in a new moon jelly exhibit, which is in between the lobby itself and the cafe, so we're opening that up. So Jim and his team actually are instrumental in working on that project right now. So I think that will be a wonderful addition. Some of the comments from our visitors and members alike is we don't know we're an aquarium until we're halfway through. So we want to bring the aquarium a little bit closer in. Again, the doors are going to be headed out towards the bay window, and you will see some changes to the cafe. We are taking this opportunity to do some interpretation on our local sustainable fisheries. So we'll be doing a whole bunch of interpreting in here with signage and photographs of our fishing industry. And then, of course, giving this much needed space a facelift.
May I ask? Are you concerned about rain at the ticketing area and the people waiting in line?
We will be having, the cover is quite larger than what they show here, but yeah, that's an issue, but it's an issue now because they don't really have much room to wait on the inside. So this is, as you're looking towards the bay windows, actually you'll see a lot of this is, again, port property. You'll see that we have done quite a bit of landscape editing and working with the walkways here, putting in towards the, do I have a little pointer? Anyway, towards the stream over there, putting in a water feature that will be on a recirc pump. So this is actually a different way to enter the facility and the galleries itself. The nature play area will be focusing on sustainable forestry. We are working with Starker Forest and other forest businesses that will help us with interpreting this. Forests, as you know, are a big part of our coastal ecosystem. So we thought it was a great idea to have the new nature play area kind of replicate the forest. So we are contracting with a company to build some nature play components that kids can climb and dig and hide and get dirty and drive their parents crazy. But it's really going to be quite an addition. This is one area that we are bumping out towards the back end of the behind the cafe area. We are also working with the fire department on expanding the fire lane, which follows the estuary trail, and making a wider door for fire trucks. Along the estuary trail, you see that we are doing a new amphitheater. We already have one at the entrance of passages where we do our pelican presentations, and it's very successful. It's an opportunity to showcase program animals and talk about conservation issues. So this will not always be, it's also a place for people to sit and look at our beautiful bay, of course, so this won't be in use all of the time. The design is somewhat replicated of our state parks. So it's somewhat natural. It'll look a little bit more natural than this. Yeah, so that's along the back side of the nature play area. Phase 2. This isn't on port property, but I will show you. So the middle galleries are Rocky Shores Gallery, and you know that's where our touch tank is. It is in need of a facelift. So we're expanding it a little bit. We're also expanding actually the gallery a little bit to make it bigger because this is one of our most popular exhibits. We worked diligently with our volunteers who staff this and kind of got their ideas for what works and what doesn't as a docent. We heard what they said and we kind of designed it around the people that actually work in this exhibit. Also worked with our aquarist, and so it's been a labor of love to do this. But we're changing all of the paint, the signage, the graphics, working with the local artists to do murals on all of the walls that are scientific murals that will replicate all of the different ecosystems that we're replicating in those galleries. Pan Pacific Gallery, we are currently working on this right now. This is the third gallery. This is the exhibit that we are actually, that's under construction right now. We hope to open it next summer. This will be kind of an Indo-Pacific gallery showcasing some tropical fish and coral reef. We will be taking, if you go down the back hallway of the aquarium where the Japanese spider crabs are and where the new exhibits are, we're gonna create a whole new dedicated gallery to jellies. We are also going to be changing all of our wayfinding. It's amazing to me after being there for 25 years how many people get lost still. But so we heard what people said. We need better signage, so we're redoing all of the signage itself, working with a company out of Boston that works with a lot of aquariums. And there's actually quite a science to wayfinding, and so we're having dedicated large map signs and of course smaller ones, again along the estuary part of port property, and then of course highlighting our larger exhibits like Passages of the Deep. Oh, I think that's it. So, I don't know what I did, but any questions? Yeah.
That was lovely. I'm looking forward to seeing it all. Do you still have the opportunity to change a big exhibit, like you'll have shipwrecks and
Right.
then you'll have this and then you'll have that? So that's
Yep,
still
that's a great
something
question.
that-
So actually, since we're putting in a dedicated jelly gallery, we're going to be taking what the theater is now,
Mhm.
and that first part where the shipwreck was,
Right.
we're taking that and making that into a dedicated changing exhibit gallery. So
okay.
you can go in and then go out, and you don't have to go down that back long hallway.
I see.
Yeah, it's going to be better for visitor flow, and it'll help our staff too, because it's just such an awkward space to work with to make exhibits. So we'll have it like a dedicated gallery.
Cool.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Yeah, please, if you have any
Anybody?
questions.
Any questions, Jim?
I don't have any questions. I'll recuse myself from voting due to a conflict of interest, but
Well, if you see my staff report, I give some additional information. I recommend that the commissioners make a motion to allow me to prepare a letter of consent to allow the aquarium to move forward and provide that letter to the city as was requested. At this point, there's no good reason why we shouldn't submit a project. And besides, our lease pretty much says that they would need a consent from us, which shall not be unreasonably withheld. So I don't think we have any reason to hold this one.
Right, it seems like a no-brainer to support this for all kinds of reasons. But just to play devil's advocate, is there any possible cost or liability from this project?
Nothing that adds up to what we already have. We have we require insurance under our lease, so no, not that I'm aware of it.
To that point, I will say that we are working with the city and the fire department to improve pedestrian access as they cross from our RV lot, they cross Ferry Slip to enter our parking lots to go to the aquarium. So we're going to be improving pedestrian access there and at the backside of Hatfield as well.
So therefore, you're saying improve safety.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Use of-
That's right. That's right.
And I actually attended both their presentation during the city meeting as well as the planning meeting, the city planning meeting, and the city planning meeting, the fire chief was there, to answer some questions and apparently working with the aquarium and addressing a few small things, so.
Do I have anyone to entertain a motion at this point? Jeff?
Yes, I move that the commission allow the general manager to prepare a letter of consent allowing the aquarium to move forward with its renovations as presented.
I'll
Second.
second that.
Any more discussion at all? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
And Karen, if you have any Jim,
I abstain.
Motion carries. No pun intended, Carrie.
Thank you.
thanks for the presentation.
Yeah, that was nice.
I'm just disappointed that changes are happening to the playground after my grandchildren.
Thank you.
All right. So on to old business. We have no items removed from the consent calendar. Has everyone had a chance to look at the accounts paid? Do we have any questions on accounts paid? Do we have a motion?
I move that we approve accounts paid.
Second, Jeff. Any discussion at all? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None opposed. Motion passes. The commission liaison update is page 53. We've been back and forth through this, so it's our meeting to definitely come to our final decisions on this. And I don't think there's a lot of changes. Albacore Fishing, Aaron Bretz, Association of Pacific Ports, Paula with Jeff, Cascades West Area Commission on Transportation. I am good with that as the lead person. And Jim, you're the alternate. Are you still good with that? Cascades West Council of Governments. I really honestly don't think I can do both Cascades West Council of Governments and Transportation, so I'm asking if somebody could step up for the Cascades West Council of Governments. Would be nice. Or do I just have to tell people what I... No,
Yeah, I can step up and volunteer for that. So.
that would be great, Gil. And Walter, do you want to be
They
the
only meet
alternate
once a year,
still?
right? Is that right?
Twice a week.
Here we go.
3 times on a Friday.
Okay.
And Walter, would you be considered remote? So, okay, well, that's good. Cascades West Economic Development District is Paula. Commercial Fishing User Group is myself and Jim. You're good with that?
Yes.
All of the procurement services, Aaron and Mark Brown make sense. That's all good with you too. Economic Development Alliance of Lincoln County, Paula and Aaron. That's good with you guys. Midcoast Watershed Council, you're still good with that, Jim? We meet first
I don't make it
Tuesday.
to all of them, but I make
Do
some.
we need an alternate for that? Is anyone willing to step up as an alternate for Jim? Jeff?
I wouldn't mind an alternate. Thursdays are hard for me.
That's good. So Jeff will be the alternate to Jim on the Midcoast Watershed Council. Yes?
Jim, do they still have, do they change their bylaws, or are we still part of their board?
I'm
I
not
know-
100% sure. The meetings I've gone to, I've not sat as part of their board. They've just been informative meetings.
Like what's the old liaison, and we actually, the Board of Newport had a seat at their board, but I never sat there just because I wasn't able to attend all at the same time.
Right.
They work on pure consensus, they don't vote.
I need to touch base with Paul anyway on some
Yeah.
other topics, so I can follow up on that.
Yeah, I know they were looking for a court representative. It'd be good for us. That's all thanks to you.
That sounds good. You guys can deal with that with the Watershed Council. Newport City Council, that's you and I, Walter.
Yep.
We're still good. That means you'll go to most of them and then I go to the ones you can't go to? Or is that the other
The
way?
ones you can't go to.
Okay, I'm good with that. And Newport Vision 2040 Advisory Committee, Gil, you're kind of been a part of that, and are you good at continuing to be a part of
Yes, but recognizing I'll be wearing 2 hats. That was one of the questions, right?
that?
So you are still wearing the other hat?
Yes, he's
Yeah, oh, yeah.
currently listed as education.
Yeah, that was the original, but was there original one for the ports and the original?
You know, I
selection?
replaced
Patricia.
I don't think it was.
I
think
replaced
ports-
Stewart.
Stewart,
I
yeah.
replaced Stewart, and they had,
Yeah.
so I could do that.
I
Like,
guess
if
you
you
mentioned
added,
this.
just, again, there's a major committee, separate folks, and then there's the subcommittees, a whole bunch, and I think that's where the ports came in terms of being on one of the subcommittees.
Mhm.
So, I'm on the same subcommittee that the port was on. I'm on that subcommittee at all, because that's the economic development subcommittee. So it's easy enough for me to wear 2 hats, one on the education committee and one on the economic development. So
I guess maybe the thing is to ask them if it's all right that you were to.
I had a phone call with them, and I didn't get a response back yet.
Okay.
So
'Cause I
I'll
did-
check in and let you know if there's any calls.
See if
I
we
went to
can do
the
that.
general meeting, and they did put me on as like a general person, as I recall.
Oh, they did?
And you'd be taking my place, unless you want me to stay on.
No, because I'm on the main committee as well.
Okay.
I'm on 3 subcommittees there.
It sounds like you're rather ensconced
We'll
and
try that
very
approach.
informed.
Well, I'm retired, so I don't
Do you think you want an alternate?
Huh? Yes, well, we do have an alternate.
I would volunteer to be that alternate.
You can appoint yourself, sir. You don't have to volunteer.
I appoint myself alternate. That sounds so official, though. I hate official stuff. OPAC, you're still good with that, Walter? Do you need a
Um,
alternate?
I think I'm the only one that can do it because it's Senate confirmation. So,
Okay, we'll put a check on that one, and thank you for continuing to do that. Oregon Coast Zone Management Associo CCMA, Walter, you're still good? And Aaron, you're good with the alternate?
That's correct.
Oregon Economic Development Association, OEDA, is Paula. Oregon Public Ports Association is Paula and Aaron. Pacific Coast Congress of Harbor Masters and Port Managers is Kent Gibson and Aaron. Pacific Northwest Waterways Association is Paula and Walter. Are you still?
And I just want to say that during our last PNWA conference, I was appointed as a member of their board as well. So,
Congratulations.
oh yeah. Thank you.
And Walter, you're still good as
Yep.
the alternate? Unless anybody else wants to take these alternate positions, just speak right up. Jeff. So anyway, moving along. Special districts is Paula. Western Fishboat Owners Association is Aaron. Equina Bay Economic Foundation, Y Beef, is Paula. And Jeff Lackey is an alternate. You're still good with that?
Yeah, I volunteer as an alternate on that one.
So Karen, if you got all that, I guess we have finally settled that. And thank you for filling in when they meet on a up-to-date basis. Helps a lot. So we're still in old business, and we are learning and talking about, on page 55, the building permit for the property at NIT. You want to give a little update on that, Paula?
Yeah, so as you can see, I have a revised report there. It's very close to what I provided the last time, but first of all, you have tabled this during the last meeting to think a little bit more about it. During the course of that time, I have talked to some of our legislators as well as the Longshore folks, and as you know, I've been working with the Longshore lobbyists trying to reach out to opportunities, and I think we're making good headways with that. I actually have some possible meetings and some that we actually already have it on the calendar. Just schedule something this week for some possibilities. So I think we're really making good headways. With that said, I don't think I've changed my mind much about the opportunity to have a log yard there is very minimal. But you never know what's going to happen in 6 months. I think the economics of a log yard right now, it's not quite there. However, I think we are making good headways with that communications. I don't want to give the idea that we're not open for business, and to be quite honest, being another 180 days, it's not going to. It will put us in a position where we know better which way we're going. I think there will be some opportunities that may come up, and if the log yard come up and the economics are there, we still have that opportunity. With that said, the cost is going to be minimal, because if it's only half a year, we're only going to be paying the city to extend that. Any SDCs will continue to be refundable if we don't move forward with the project. So I did put in my staff report to recommend that we have talked to the city and see if the city is willing to extend that permit, because as you may recall, the letter from the city says they want a plan. We don't have a plan. We don't have a project at this point. So we can only be honest to them and say, well, we don't have a project, but we are pursuing businesses, and we would like to keep this open for at least another 180 days, see what happens. If at the end of that time we don't have anything in the horizon, then we just terminate the permit, get our SDCs back, and move forward with whatever other opportunities that may come up. Obviously, the explanation of the fact that permit, the building permit, is only for a log yard, nothing else is there. The city came here, Derek Topos came here and spoke to that. So it's really your call if you want to keep this open, keep again the chain of communications open with those folks that we are indeed pursuing businesses, if that opportunity with Longyear come along, then we still can do that. If it doesn't, then we'll move forward to something else. So,
Well, I will first say that looking at the August 29th letter from the city, also please provide an explanation for the reasons for the delays. Please submit this information no later than October 31st to allow for review and processing prior to the scheduled expiration date of November 27th. So we're definitely at the point where it's a yay or nay on extending this 180 days. And, we did take a precautionary move at the last meeting because we don't want to stop progress on good communications with everybody and possible business opportunities. But I'm very curious what the rest of the commission feels about this. Jim?
Does that 180 days afford us the ability to better explain whether we're staying or terminating to county commissioners, the city, coastal caucus, all these things that we were kind of highly criticized for not doing over the last several years? So if nothing else, it seems like a good time to communicate. And I know you said you've done a little bit. Do you think there's more to do? Or?
well, I think it will put us in a better position to really know what that market is doing and what other opportunities there are. Because if indeed we have other opportunities, like right now I have, again, some appointments with some folks for other opportunities that has nothing to do with that business. If that comes along and we cannot even use that permit, for instance, then we know. But if there are things that start showing up that, oh, wait a minute, maybe, I think it would give us a better idea. We don't waste any more with that and move forward, or we feel like, okay, there's more to it now. Because for a while there was no business really being pursued during the time that permit was empty. Now we are chasing some business. So, at least give us that time frame to know better. I don't know if we're going to have a clear vision, but we'll have a better idea, I would say.
Walter?
I think that's a good way forward. And the only other question I would have is this common practice for the city to do this with other building permits?
I had a long conversation with Eric about this, and he said that typically they don't keep a building permit open for this long without some actual construction, some actual movement.
Correct.
Gil?
So one issue that Sarah, you raised this, right? And this was the use of these SDC funds that we have out of the city. That they could be used to address the drainage issue, right? Which need work. So I guess I'm looking at Paula here to say, is that still an important issue, and are there other funds to address it?
That is still an important issue. As a matter of fact, just today we got an email from the property owner next door talking about addressing some issues that we have in common, and some of those are the drainage, So certainly there are a few. I guess I'll look to my director of finance here. If you look at what we have right now for SDCs, I think it's less than $50,000 that we'll probably get back. We don't know what the cost really would be to address some of those issues, but those are ongoing things that at this point in time we only a few months, now 8 months away from another fiscal year, and I think we do have some funds that we can probably appropriate to start at least addressing some of that.
Yes, we do.
So,
Okay.
I was going to ask.
okay.
Jeff?
Go ahead if you're following along.
Oh, okay.
No. We had been doing some small maintenance out there, moving stuff around the last every 6 months to keep the permit alive. Are we not doing that anymore?
No, we're still doing that. That was one of the questions I was going to have. when we get up to this next deadline, we will have needed to move, if we decide to continue the first 100, we will have needed to move some dirt around prior to that deadline.
Yeah.
That deadline.
Yeah,
Well,
next
and
week.
that is the conversation we would again have with the city if we decide to make that request, is that, well, I even find that to be no good reason at all to keep moving something just to move. I mean, we don't have an actual project. So to me, in my request to the city, probably would be, we don't have that project. We don't want to keep wasting money with things that we're not really doing a specific project. And then probably would be not having to do that during the 6 months until we figure out which path we're taking. And if they allow us, then we probably won't be spending that money. If they don't, if they really need to see something more action, and I would say the action is not going to be moving dirt, it's going to be actually building something. So,
Jeff?
So the city has requested some information, and maybe there's been some initial discussions, but not maybe a full sort of, here's the answers to the questions. So I assume that if the commission moves forward with your recommendation, then you would give some answers to those questions and then see what the city's response is to that.
I would say all we can do is be honest.
Uh-huh.
And be straightforward with the position where we are right now, and letting the city know that should an opportunity like that come up, and we have to spend all that money again to get the permit, it's very expensive. But we don't have, that project is kind of an halt right now in a way until a new project comes up. So with that said, there will be a request without providing specifics. And if they're able to allow us to move along without providing some of that, that's the only way we can do this, because we really honestly don't have a project. And we would just go to the city with that. We don't have a project. And for that same reason, I would ask them to allow us not to have to keep moving dirt for no good reason. It's like, what's the point?
So we don't know what their response is going to be and how the discussion will go, but this is...
I don't. I actually just saw Derek at the infrastructure summit yesterday, and I talked to him, and he still feels like, well, we should just terminate this. Because, but I didn't get into the details of asking and getting, into let's move forward for the 6 months on, so forth, because I didn't know what the commissioners wanted to do. So if you want me to go back to the city and ask, I'll talk to Derek again in more detail about what the intent is.
My question would be, are they going to be able to answer yes or no on their end by our next regular meeting in November, which comes a little earlier, on the 19th? And also, if they're like, yeah, move a little dirt, everything's fine, and we do the 180, what if we get a great opportunity that isn't a log yard?
Mm-hmm.
Would we be able to say, oh, we're terminating that now?
Well, if we do get another opportunity that is not a log yard, obviously, first thing I would do is go to them and say, this is the project.
Right.
How close is this from,
Right.
depending on what it is, maybe completely different. And from my discussion with Derek is that it would be very hard to create a project that is super, that is very similar to that, in order to be able to use the same transportation impact analysis and everything else that was done in order to open that permit in the first place. But all I can do is go back and say, now we got this project, what should we do? Should we terminate this? Or is there any parts of this permit that can be used? from my conversations, I don't think we can, if it's something else, but I still would ask the question. There's a lot of ifs in the air, I guess.
Mhm.
If we do get the extension, is there a reason why instead of moving material, we can't start going forward to addressing to mediate some of the potential wetlands that we're developing out there? Instead of just moving material, we do it with a purpose?
Yeah, that's what we want to do.
Okay.
Definitely, I think we definitely need to start focusing on addressing some of that issue.
And that would be part of construction anyway.
And maybe that's the way to mitigate that fact that we're not moving it.
My last question would just be again on the CDCs and the 48K that we might get back, that we would get back, that isn't necessarily going to be put to use on that property.
I would like to use that. As a matter of fact, I would say in general, I'm working with Mark, we're just talking about that at one point. Anytime you have funds coming from one property, we should always try as much as we can to put back on that property. Or at least we should put into some property account where we use towards improving properties in general. And those are the type of things we're going to be looking into it.
Okay, I have no more questions.
But ultimately, it's up to you what you want us to use, because there will be a fair amount of funds that will be needed, and we're going to be coming to you for those authorizations when it's time. But as internally, I think we're going to try to create some accounts and come to you during budget and show those accounts that we are creating some of those purposes.
Yeah, we are definitely in flux of getting financials settled and
Yes.
going in the right direction.
A
So,
lot of work going in on that. We'll talk to that in a moment, but yes.
so do we have a motion to entertain here? One way or the other?
I'll make a motion. Make a motion to have staff work with the city on a possible extension of the building permit number 13743 for another 180 days. Should no project become feasible for the use of this permit during that period, then staff would terminate the permit and request for funds of the SDCs.
We have a second? Second, Gil. Any more discussion on this item? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? None. Motion passes. So on to new business. This is very commission-centric. A lot of it is goal-setting discussion. I feel compelled, if I'm able to, move C to A, just because the C is the annual calendar of events discussion, which is page 65 of our packet, which gives us an overview of the year. As we look at goal setting and general manager performance evaluation, it's mostly scheduling is what we're talking about, and I just think that we would do well to have a discussion about our annual calendar of events first, unless there's any kind of objection to that.
And let me just say that we put this annual calendar of events as per request of Commissioner Blackie, and we try to the best of our ability to figure out what items have the board gone through that is specifically commission items that you would like to have it on the calendar on an annual basis. And we threw in a couple other items such as my evaluation and discussion with Sarah. So feel free to add or question or the dates, again, some of those dates are based on previous stuff that it was done in the past. So again, it's just here as a starter.
Right. Jeff, do you want to speak to this? Is it what you kind of wanted?
Sure, this is exactly what I requested, that we look at our annual events that we do every year, centered around a lot of the budget, and I'd actually thought about it from a comment Walter had made, that we haven't been through a normal year in a while. And it occurred to me, Walter's the only one who's been through a normal year. So anyway, I thought maybe
I
let's
didn't have
look
gray
at
hair either. I didn't have gray hair.
as our most senior member. But, and so I thought it'd be good for us to take a look so that we all the commissioners sort of know what to expect. And the one question I had out of this was sort of the strategic business plan. Where does it fit in to review that? And something I was kind of envisioning, I wanted to ask the commission and Walter, who's been through this, I would like to see something like Paula present to us the strategic business plan. Here's the items on it. Here's what we've done. Here where we are now, and here's where I want to go. And in that would be, well, we thought we were going to do this project, but there's not a grant available for that, but there's an opportunity here. So our priorities changed. And to see something like that as part of the process, and kind of where might that fit in? Would it fit in as part of the general manager review process, budget priorities work, on goal setting starting in January? Where in that process would that fit in? And so that's something I wanted to ask Paula and the commission what they thought.
So my initial thought when you mentioned that, it was, okay, so when I came on board, there were no goal settings. Okay, so my goal setting was based on the strategic plan. So that to me has been my Bible in a way, so I look at that, and there are some priorities already on the strategic plan, which, just like you said, there are times where you get monies for this and that beforehand. So one discussion I had with Sarah was that perhaps what we could do during the goal setting is I'll probably bring to you the goal settings based on the strategic plan, what items we looking into the next budget years according to the strategic plan, and maybe do for the first year, and maybe another list for the second, just in case you want to move things around a little, because that's okay if that happens. And so that was my initial ideas, that if we do that, you're already sort of addressing the strategic plan under your goal setting, and then every year we bring in the new items. After a certain point, and usually every 5 years, you want to completely revisit your strategic plan. But initially, that was my thought.
Yeah, so I was going to ask you what goal setting was. It was annual, because you have a strategic plan now. Mm-hmm. So is goal setting an annual? Are you trying to set just things to target for annually that are consistent with the broader goals of the strategic plan? So there's two different things. One is the broad goals of the plan, and then there's maybe use a different word if you're using the word goals in the strategic plan, annual objectives or something. And if that's what we're trying to do, is discuss what that yearly set of objectives are, consistent with the broader goals of the plan.
I was trying to understand that myself, because I wasn't aware of that goal setting until Jeff brought that up. So I looked it up, and apparently that was done in the past. And my understanding is that was used somewhat as part of the general manager evaluation. But what do you?
So let me put on my old man hat. So when we signed this, did the resolution, it was around Kevin's hiring, and Joanne and Kevin and the commission sat down. So what it was all based around was the budget. Commissioners reviewed the general manager around the budget. We had a strategic business plan at that time. That was what we used as one of our guiding principles. But as you all know, things come up, and they go away. So we would start in December with the evaluation process, and we would do the general manager's review in January. And that was when we gave the general manager the review, and we worked on not only what we thought the general manager should be doing, but talked about what that they had been done the year prior. And so 2 years ago, when one of our other interim general managers, when we had the meeting with that person, and we said, okay, the commission sat down and said, hey, this is what the goals are, and then we came to the budget, it was something completely different. But that way, I won't diverge. When the commission and the general manager meets, they do the review, and at the end of the review, the goals worked out during the evaluation become the goals of the commission and the general manager. And that allowed the general manager to go to the department heads 4 months ahead of the budget and say, this is what the port and my goals are. What do you want to have done? And then it allowed the staff and the general manager to work for 2 months on what their goals were, and then we came to the budget, and then we had a pretty easy deal.
And those goals are meant to fit within the strategic business plan.
So, yeah, and there are other things that come up, like new washers and dryers or something
Right,
that
right.
might come up, and there's always going to be something. We can't predict sinkholes and things like that, but otherwise, it's mostly we stuck to the strategic business plan. And if we knew there was a grant coming up that we could pick off a C, we would pick off the C. And the one thing is we always made sure that if the general manager didn't complete all 10 goals or whatever, they carried over. They didn't get credit for something that was halfway done. So, and it just made a very smooth process, and it made a lot better for continuity and planning purposes. And the staff knew what we were looking for, and the general manager was looking for, and then it was a pretty good deal. So that was the whole reason for doing it. And we did do some other goal sessions, but that was after a couple of years, and where we wanted to do a South Beach plan, and that was because Kevin had gotten a grant to do that, but we put that to the side because we had something else come up. The goal sessions were mainly around the review. That way it gave us a chance to work with the general manager and to cohesively and collaboratively come up with the direction for the next year.
I just, I understand your point completely. To me, it kind of is a little messy doing the goals and the general manager performance.
Yeah.
Because we are so recently have done a strategic business plan this time. So I would look at goal setting as a separate deal.
Or since we just did Plan B, I think we've already done those are our goals.
Right. And I think it just innately comes up in the general manager performance. The strategic business plan will come up in discussions with the performance evaluation. So I differ in that regard.
But we're talking developing goals for the following year as well.
Right, but even though we have a strategic business plan that's new, Paul had pointed out when we were discussing it that basically the goal setting with a recent strategic business plan, we're looking at the capital improvements more than anything else. What are those still in line with our goals? Whenever we do our goal setting yearly, are we still thinking we're going to meet that capital improvement list and its goals separately? Is kind of, I almost look at the goals for this year as where are we at on our capital improvements out of the strategic business plan. So I think goal setting is more in tune with the strategic business plan.
But even, excuse me, even with besides the capital improvement, there are other parts, like for instance, bringing the staff up to par, things like that, and PR and other things that are also in the
Ongoing.
strategic plan,
Right.
and trying to bring in new businesses, all of those. Those could also be part of the goal setting. Some things will be sort of ongoing, and some things will be focused on the capital improvement.
And the other thing is that the performance evaluation, it's up to Paula if she wants it open or closed. Actually, it's up to us, an executive session. And as president, I would prefer an executive session talking about performance evaluations of the GM. And goal setting, of course, wants to be more public. So that's my final word on all of that. I see them as two separate things. Gil?
So I wanted to ask Walter, who has the institutional memory. So did you use the strategic plan in the past to design goals and evaluate progress in a serious way, in a way that
Yeah.
you actually pulled it out and really evaluated it? And it was used also to evaluate
Yeah.
performance. So.
And the improvement plan was also part of that, but that was, the reason we did that around the budget was because it's great that we have that improvement plan, but if we don't have the money to do those projects, it doesn't really matter. And I think, honestly, for almost every one we did was, it'd be great to tackle that list, we just need to get more revenue.
Yeah,
And so-
I understand.
And that's why the goal setting was great, but then the budget was reality. And so, regardless of what your goals are, if you don't have the money to meet those goals, it's a good way of, what you want to do and then getting the reality of what you really can do. And there are other things that came up, grants come up, and like I said, to do little projects, or something might fall into our laps and we can jump on that. But,
So, just to follow up with that, the way I would suggest doing this is to not call these goals, come up with a different word, to do annual progress or maybe an annual progress evaluation or something. So it is focusing on annual. We do look at our progress. We do look at, are we achieving our goals, and what do we expect to try to achieve this year? So that it's looking at the year, but it's linking directly to the business strategy. And then that also should, obviously the evaluation should not just link to the goals of the year, but the entire performance of the general manager for the whole strategic plan and all the other things, which I assume it does.
Any more discussion?
It's probably a little redundant, but I just think on the topic of objectives and strategies, kind of fleshing out some of that so we have a better handle of what that looks like over the course of a year. It doesn't need to be part of this coming evaluation, but as we set these non-goals, but having how we evaluate the strategic plan and how we move forward on making these baby steps, and kind of teasing out and help developing or help seeing the vision in which Paula has for those objectives and strategies and how we get there could be kind of written into those annual objectives.
The goals as they
Yeah.
stated now.
And how that ties in with us making progress with the business plan.
All I can say is that if I don't have specific goals that you want me to follow, I will continue following the strategic plan. And pretty much have been working with my staff and following those things, So certainly, if you want to pick up specific things from the strategic plan or whatever that you want me to follow, it will be easier for you to evaluate my performance. It will make it easier on me in a way because I know exactly what I need to focus. Otherwise, I'll be just doing what I believe is, it's the right way to follow that. Instead of your way to follow, and I'd rather know from you what you want from me.
Okay, well, as president, I've been thinking about this quite a bit, and I do like looking at goals as annual progress evaluations, and yet Paula needs goals. So the way that I see the world, to throw it out there, looking at our annual calendar of events, the goal setting discussion, whether we want to call it annual progress evaluations, I think is good where it sits on the calendar in January. I actually thought maybe February would be better. That I think it should be a standalone
I support that.
work session or with a regular meeting or something that would be very public, I think is the difference between the evaluation and goal setting. And so that I myself would like to see that in February, just because it's a little slower month. January is still tail end of holidays, and some people are real busy with vessels that move around in January. So that would be my choice for goal setting. And general manager performance evaluation scheduling, I think it's important, just what Paula has said, that we do an evaluation at the 6 months, because Paula started in May. And so the 6-month evaluation would be in November. And we would use the score sheet performance evaluation that starts on page 61 in our packet as what we'd be following. And in that, I would prefer an executive session and a discussion perhaps on that, only because we're talking about the personnel. And personnel issues to me are usually, we aren't making any decisions in executive, but it gives us more free rein. And I think it's critical that now that we're whole, Gil hasn't been here that long, but now is the time for all of us to make sure with an evaluation with our general manager that things are going the way we all expect. So it's not a goal setting, but I think it will help Paula know she's on the right path. So I'd like to do that in November. Goal setting in January or February. And then an annual performance evaluation also for Paula in May. That discussion might be more of some kind of monies involved, and that would not go into effect until the new fiscal year. But I just think as a timeline, basically this new business is setting some kind of scheduling for these. And so that's my recommendations.
My only pushback, Sarah, would just be is having your review in May. That's one of our busiest months as far as we got budget committee meetings, we adopt resolutions, we're going to be going through fees, compensation plans for everybody else. And if we could move it, if we could do that in April, I mean, I know it's not a year, but do that in April instead of May. That way we have something going into one of our busier months.
The budget is certainly a high priority.
Yeah.
But we also are adopting compensation plans in May, which will fit that.
But then usually the reviews are long. Like I said, I'm just trying to.
We could start it in April, and
They can do the review. That way we have.
yeah, I'm amenable to that. Does well,
For us, as we're talking, because we were trying to put together, after that salary survey, we're really trying to put together a budget for what to ask for next fiscal year for the rest of the staff. And quite frankly, as I'm talking to Mark, I'm struggling what to ask for myself, because it's not really up to me, it's up to you.
right,
You know, and to be in tune with all of that.
right,
So at
right.
that point, I think if we did that maybe in April, then when we do the May that budget for the rest, that could be included if there's, depending on what.
That's a huge consideration. Thank you for speaking up about that. I just know the budget's always there early in the year. April gives you enough time?
It's going to be close. It'll be tight with April, but we'll make it work. We'll have to do a lot of work up front, which is what we've done anyway.
Because it would be for the evaluation, would be not a long, it would just be a executive session back into a regular session. It would not be during the regular meeting at the end of the month. We could do it earlier in the month. So that sounds, if you said you can make it work, you want to
With some
stick with that.
flexibility on our part.
Yeah. We're just tentative on the first part of April.
That's fine.
But here it says February. It's just, if we're doing the review in November. Yes, Karen?
I just wanted to ask Aaron, do you remember when the department heads kind of gave their goals?
It was
Were they reviewed them?
very early on. Yeah, it was well before any of we ever decided. I think it was early January.
I think that was partly based on the goal setting too.
Yeah.
Right, well, we do have goal setting on for January. Well, now, I don't think any of this is motion worthy, but
No.
we needed to discuss and have, and so as president, I could get together with the powers that be to schedule a November 6-month review for the GM. And what's the preference of the commission? You want to do that during the same day as the regular meeting? Pick a different day during the month? Do a noon work session, or just not even noon, just before the... I think it...
Same day before.
Same
Yeah,
thing,
I
same
kind of would
day.
like to do a noon executive instead of just putting it into one big meeting.
That would be
Okay,
fine.
So Karen, let's
day of.
add a noon meeting during that same day of the next commission, which is the, what, 17th, wasn't it?
The 19th, I believe. It's coming right up because of the holidays. Well, if that's amenable to everyone, it's just good that we're having these discussions, and I think a lot will come out of our evaluation too, to understand each other and know where we're going.
I think I might be flying on that day.
Well, I have a question about that.
Right?
So if you're conducting the review on the noon meeting, are you going to be filling out these forms by the end of October? Or
Right. But,
So in the past,
yes.
the president has designated someone on the commission to handle the sheets.
How wonderful of you to volunteer for that.
How about the guy who's going to be flying? No. Yeah, and we can. It was in the past. It was someone who had a place of business or somewhere where we can drop something off.
Right. Well, foul weather.
Well, and it wasn't. It didn't have to be the president, but it was someone you designated. It could be the president, but it was
Right,
someone who
right.
could do that, and you were the only ones that saw them.
Right.
And then we gave you an envelope, and then
Right.
brought them to the meeting.
So we would need that before the end of this month.
Yeah.
Is
This
that
meeting,
all?
you should probably designate someone to.
Well, like I say, Walter, you sound so versed in the subject. Would you
I can do
consider
that.
doing that?
No, I would consider doing that. And
Thank
so,
you. Thank you.
All I would need is to make sure everybody
And so we would have these
filled out,
filled out for the executive session on perhaps the 18th.
and then I would pick them up.
Yeah, I read that too. And,
I pick them up, whatever this is. I pick them up a week before, and then
right, it is all in here.
yeah. So I would pick them up on the 12th of November, or everyone would have to get them to me by the 12th of November,
In
and
envelopes.
then we'd tabulate them.
You and I, or
I don't
Just
remember.
you.
I'll have to figure out.
yeah, I need to reread that
Yeah,
also.
but that would be the process if that worked with everybody.
Sound good? So what's your schedule like, Jeff?
I get back on the 19th and I leave again on the 21st.
So you'll be here on the 19th?
I land in Portland at 3:21.
You won't
Oh.
even
Nope.
make the commission.
I was
And
gonna
you'll be
either
gone the
late, or if
18th?
it was important, stop in Corvallis and be on the phone. But I didn't see huge important issues coming up in November.
Right.
so
You're the
far.
one who asked for the calendar.
Too late, pal.
Oh, touche.
So,
But I would,
the
I would like
20th,
to, I could do the
A
20th.
lunch on the 20th.
but then that's after our regular meeting. So that's,
Doesn't make a difference.
doesn't make any difference.
The meeting.
Right, it'll just be a day after.
I'm restricted till 2 o'clock on that day. I'm available from 12 to 2.
That sounds doable.
Right, 2 hours should be fine.
I think you get the gist of it all.
The
Noon.
20th?
You're talking about the 20th?
20th.
On what time? Noon?
Noon, 12 till 2.
Yep, I can make that.
That sounds like a go.
You'll be done in an hour, you don't have much to talk about.
It's only 6 months, right?
We just want to have lunch.
An
It's
hour,
the next one.
an hour for each month. I mean, anyway. Well, I'm glad that we sound settled on that.
Yeah.
We have a plan. We have a date. We understand our annual calendar of events. Did we want to secure goal setting for January?
January's good.
Is that good with everybody?
Or what you really want to do in February?
No, I'm good. I leave at the end of January in a couple weeks.
Yes.
And
Well,
if the department heads are meeting in January, that would give Paula and staff a bunch of time.
right, so if all of their stuff will be turned in before our meeting, I think it's pretty important to take that department head, their goals into consideration while we're developing kind of bigger picture goals.
Is that something, again, that we'd want to have a dedicated work session, which I don't usually, I'm not into noon work sessions, but these seem like great opportunities to have robust discussions that would make a regular meeting last a lot longer. I don't know, what do you think, Walter?
No, I agree. It's usually better to have that as a work session.
And would February be better for the staff? Give you time to see the goals that are coming out of the staff and help?
I guess it depends on Mark and how long it will take us, once you get the goals in February, how much time we have to put the budget together. Because that's going to depend a bit on the goals.
February, I've looked at historical, and sometimes they haven't started the budget till April.
Okay, so
It's April, so we should be okay.
For goals.
Yeah.
So we want to do them in February or January?
February work session?
January works. I guess it doesn't matter, but we should have a consensus.
So,
And honestly, Jim, it's kind of funny that staff goals are usually a lot of ours the same. Everything's
Right, I think
Right.
it's good to have that process kind of as it's a good building
even without
exercise.
seeing them, they're essentially they're eerily the
So
same.
the
Well,
department
I
heads
hope
meet in
so.
January.
we can meet in January, come up with our goals,
And then we can meet in
In
February.
February, I think that's more efficient.
Okay, and you got all that, Karen? As a tentative February for goal setting, the 20th for our work session on GM
Yeah.
review. All right,
Good
we're
shot.
gaining ground.
Sarah?
Yes?
So what do others think about having a strategic business plan stacks? What's been worked on, where we're at, and where Paula recommends we go relative to addressing the strategic business plan, and having that so that in our, whether it's called goal setting or progress or whatever, we have that to then communicate with Paula.
What I thought I would do, Jeff, I talked to Sarah today about this, is I'll give you kind of an introduction to your goal settings in a way that shows where we are with that strategic plan. Because I think that probably will be helpful to you in setting that up. So at this point, okay, these are the goals that we already halfway, some of them we met, some of them we halfway already about to meet, and some of those are still on our budget or we're looking to next budget. So I'll try to give you an introduction to it, so it makes it a little bit easier for you to get the actual goal setting moving forward, if that's okay.
And would it include, here's some that I think we could prioritize in the coming year?
Yeah, that was my intent. So basically would be, okay, these are the areas of the strategic plan that we are expecting during this year, next year, that is, and these are the things we already done, these are the ones that are closed, and so it will be kind of like that.
Great.
Yeah. I think that would be easy to do.
And I do agree with Gil that we'll keep it as goal settings, I guess, but it is an annual progress evaluation in essence.
Well,
Because it will be annual, that's why Jeff asked for this.
Well, but I'm still a little confused. So port has its long-term strategic plan that you guys all work on. You help set that vision, you help set those goals. Are they called goals? I can't remember the plan.
Well, it's not called goals.
What are they called? Okay, so anything that we talk about for annual should be reflective of how that plan is structured.
Right.
And we've all agreed on that.
Mhm.
And then what you're looking on, so this gets back to your idea, which is a good one, that we should always look annually at the progress of the strategic plan. And then for the given year, what are specific items that we're going to work on for that year consistent with the plan. So I'm trying to sort through
Right.
this to see how all this
And that's what I would
fits together. And that's how you would do that. Okay.
I would bring where we are that year, and some, like Sarah mentioned, if some of the goals have not been met the previous year because of funds of this or that, then those will continue into the next year. Well, some of those probably may be eliminated because we realize it just doesn't meet our intent anymore. Sometimes that happens.
And there are some things that aren't as the strategic business plan that aren't part of the goals. We've had employee handbooks before. We've had other things like that aren't part of the port's overall strategic business plan, but as part of the general manager's plan. And that's something that we need to be considered too. Paula needs to be able to run the port also, and there's other things like training and evaluations and all that stuff.
Those are more operational.
Yeah, but those are in the past has been part of the goals too.
Part
Because
of their goals, right? Not
Yeah.
the larger strategic goals.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
But we didn't have an employee manual, and we didn't have a lot of these things, and so that was, updating those manuals now that they're becoming more important to the state.
So that would be good to separate those two out. So
Yeah.
keep the strategic goals are in plan, and then the operational business.
We are always receiving new rules, new requirements, being especially a public entity in an employer and so on and so forth. There are always a whole bunch of that. And there may be things throughout, the management of the port that I may realize we really need to apply things that would help the staff do a better job. Again, as you said, some trainings and things like that. And there are a few things on the strategic plan right now that talks about the survey evaluation, things like that, because they realized that there was a discrepancy there, but there isn't details about, some of the trainings and things like that. And I'm finding a lot of that to be necessary. And again, as you mentioned, I may bring that as part of my goal as well. So besides working on all the things strategic plan, I have other things I'm working on it as well. So
Again, I think that a lot of this is going to get flushed out when we do our 6-month GM review, we do the goal setting, because staff is moving forward. And so we've got really exciting things to learn from the staff that will change how we look at the strategicness of our plans, I think. So it's good to keep it in motion moving forward, I think is important. So I'm real happy.
And I'm happy that for the first time in over 2 years we're fully staffed.
Yay.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
well, I guess Aaron wished he could say the same. He still needs some staff.
Yeah, there's still
Yeah.
a couple,
At least
2
the
openings. right?
administration portion is staffed.
Yeah. Well, it wouldn't be the Port of Newport if there weren't challenges. So. I thank everybody for that great discussion. And moving on, we'll do staff reports, Director of Finance and Business Services.
Good evening. You'll find the financial reports on page 11. I'm going to briefly touch on those for you. Big thing to know, our net operating income, which is the gross income less expenses, excludes your capital expenditures, your operating, what it takes to operate your business, was 115% based on the previous 5 years of where we're going to be at our ending value. So what does that mean? That means we're at $115 today. June 30th next year, we'll be at $100. So we'll make a little more money next month, and it's So from here on out, we use earnings points. Okay, in our operating income. So I went back 5 years, compiled the data to see where we'd be at. Based on that, I've given you some projections in the report on what I think we'll end at. I think the one thing I see missing in this report is a statement of cash flow. How's our cash flow going now? What's our cash flow going? What's our beginning and ending balances? So we'll be working on that. You won't see it next month, but you'll see it in the future once as I put that together. We'll put together a real income statement, so it's not a cash flow statement, and a cash flow statement for you, for each of the major funds that have activity. I think that will help you move forward and make decisions. Okay, so we'll work on that with you. Overall, the report has done well. As you can see with this, we have a net, we call it net ordinary income. It's net operating income is another way to say it. 589,159 for the year to date. We have some other income expenses, which are non-operating income, bring our total to 600,000 for the year. So generally, we're doing well, but again, you're going to see we won't make money from here. Essentially, we won't make money. That's what you're going to see. So breaking down, moving into administration, spent 239,000. Of course, we have no offset for lease. As we start closing our months, month to month, you'll still see this. Just so you know that, you'll see another line that shows it being transferred out. There's been some question I've heard historically about allocating administrator or indirect costs. So I have a question. Are Paula's, Aaron's, mine, and our staff, are they essential to running the port?
Are you showing at Jim?
If they're essential,
They're essential.
they're our operating expense. They're essential towards operations to make it operating. And that's how you define operating expense. Just like a depreciation expense, it's a cost of the dock because it devalues over time. And you're just recognizing the use of that dock. So that's why you would do that. So I wanted to give you an explanation on why it should be done, so you understand, but you still will, GASB 34 requires it, have your statement of administration just like you do today. There'll just be another line that shows a transfer out, so you can see that it was transferred out. And the net ending balance will be zero. That help?
So do you try to allocate out those, what we call them, overhead costs or administrative costs to the different profit centers, or not?
Yes.
So you will, so you'll get all the.
That's
In the future.
That's very typical. I evaluate about 7 different methodologies, starting with personal service dollars, FTE, a combination of those two. I said, wait a second, what is a major factor that port docks, RV parks have? Oh, they have marina slips that you moor from, and they have RV spots that you rent. And it seemed to be the most logical to do. And then when you get down within the profit centers, you have sub-profit centers, operating sub-programs. And from there, you can use your personal services dollars or FTE allocation to do the minor stuff. And if you do it that way, the feds will actually accept it when we get to an indirect proposal together. So if we get federal dollars, we could match our overhead based on our rates.
Also, with the sub-centers and such, we as commissioners can, of course, get a broad overview, but your programs and things you're investigating to run the port more efficiently, anytime we want more detail on a certain profit center, it's just a click of a button for you.
That's where I'm moving.
That would be
That's where
refreshing.
we will get.
Yeah.
So that Your leased properties, you're going to have leased properties in International Marina, leased properties in commercial, leased properties on South Beach. But commercial properties, commercial marina, leased properties is a subset of that. Moorage is a subset of that. Services provided to commercial fishermen is a subset. So I can click a button, go down and say, what is my income related to that? What are my expenses and overhead related to that? So I can run an income statement on each subcenter. So we can tell you what each subcenter is making or losing.
I thought revealing, I did spend a couple minutes with Mark today, and, the lease for Inland Marine. They do a huge business with recreational. They do a huge business with commercial. So where does that go in the overall scheme of plugging that lease in to, it gets real detailed real quick.
It can be very, very difficult, but it is on the north side.
Right.
So therefore, I would at this point, with consultation of my peers and us, determine where the best place to put it is.
Right.
It's not a decision. Ultimately, it's the commission's decision on where you want to put it, because there are no GAP or GASB rules.
I would say typically you do put in the same location where that is versus if it's a recreation, commercial, whatever. And then we can also separate that out by leases and pick up the leases, but as far as the profit center, you want that to go where the location of the property is.
Right. Any questions?
Right. Well, thank you. We'll get international terminals, showed a small profit. I figured the overhead on that, though, would be around $60,000. So if you add overhead again, it does not. That's page 14, by the way. If you add overhead into that, it's not very well. Everyone knows that. I'll slow down. I see people are jumping around on their pages. So page 14 was the international terminal. Page 15, that's the South Beach. Again, it's done very well. It will begin losing money in November. It'll start showing a loss based on historical. Everyone knows our busy time of year is May through October. I'm not going to cover the maintenance at this point. For these properties, we have very few expenses. These properties being page 17. We have very few expenses related to these properties, and we have straight income, so they always do really well. NOAA, it's catching up. It'll show profitability. We don't have dredging this year, so it should do pretty well. No activity really in the maintenance fund. No activity to speak of in the construction fund. In bond and debt, we haven't paid any payments yet. We will get, I saw the statement around $800,000 collecting from property taxes, another $100,000 in general operating funds from local taxes. So it'll be about $900,000. Other things that are in my report, we've evaluated the QuickBooks accounting system. And it will be considered moving forward as we put out an RFP to see what's our best option moving forward. The RFP will not obligate us, because we'll put the correct language in there to not obligate us to do something. But I really believe, based on my initial analysis, that we're maybe running an additional staff member, maybe not, but I think we are. That could be allocated differently to help the port in other ways. Okay. Just get rid of the tickets alone. That would help a lot. So there's tickets for the Heister, the Cranes. Those get written up, then they have to come into the office. Then we have to enter them to the accounting system. Now, talk about things like that. Lot of steps. Audit still is not complete yet, but I anticipate early next month that we'll have the audit back from the auditors. We anticipate no findings at this point, and a couple suggestions for us, but they were very minor. So that was really good to hear. And just going through to make sure I hit. The other thing is, Paul and I discussed banks and financial institutions. In order to make sure we're getting the best return on our dollar, we want to put a request for quotation out there. Let's see what the other financial institutions can offer. Let's take it probably from 3 down to 2 financial institutions and combine some of our money to make the best financial return for the port. Along with that, we'll put together an investment policy for you so that we have guidelines, if we have excess money, on how we can invest that to make even more money. Very low risk, short-term type of things. So I've got a copy of another port's investment policy. And that's how I beg, borrow, and steal where I can. We're reviewing IT policies. You'll see those coming out, as well as the new OFLA policy, or New Family Leave Act, that we have to make sure we're following legally. The IT policies, we want to become what's called PCI compliant. That means it's difficult for others to break into our system, so that we can store credit card information in our accounting system. That will save us 2 days a month of staff time, just that one step. But I have to get PCI compliant first. You have a chart there of the income and general operating funds by profit center for your review. If there are any questions, feel free to ask them. And then an accounts receivable report is attached to the end for your review. We did find some people in South Beach that skipped paying, so we have sent letters out to them asking that they remit payment. We've had 2 of them call us and to make arrangements to pay us, so it's a good thing. And with that, I'll move into, if there's no questions, I'll move into the occupancy report.
That's good.
The RV park remained full through the end of September. Bill noted that I want to make sure I get this right. The Marina RV park is slightly behind last year's numbers. What was good to know is we put in a system for reservations next year that was more like a lottery system. First, it's the longer term got first choice, et cetera, it went really well. Even with the price increases, there's only one customer that said, not sure I can do that next year. So that tells me we're starting to hit that sweet spot that we're looking for. So we'll be watching that. And I did hear you last month, Bill, when you said, so we are watching that. But we'll do a survey of the parks in the area early to mid next year to see where the others are landing and to make a determination on what we should or should not do. And with that, I will stop and answer any questions anyone might have.
Any questions? Good. Thank you. You were very thorough in the.
I did have one question. So back to your proposal to get a new financial computer system or ERP system. When will you think you have one of those estimates? And I guess I had one more thought that it's sometimes hard to. You've done a good job so far of trying to calculate where the cost savings will be. Right? You've already started to figure that out, which isn't always easy to do, to say exactly what the cost savings are when you put these new systems in, even though you think they're helping you be more efficient.
That's correct.
So, but the more you can do that is great, because I don't know, these systems can be fairly expensive. Or what's the magnitude? You might just share that with us.
So, let me give you some timelines I have in mind.
Okay.
Today I was starting working on the requirements for a new system. It would include potentially an RV park system, because the RV park system in no way touches the QuickBooks right now. So again, a manual process. The reports out of the current system are really poor. It's even hard to tell who owes us money. It's that bad. So I'm hoping to have those done by December, so we can put an RFQ out or an RFP out in January, February. By March, we'll have the results and start being able to evaluate. My first year guess would be $175,000, $175,000, because you have implementation costs your first year. If you were to buy a system that integrates to QuickBooks, you're looking at, there are some systems, okay, that will integrate to QuickBooks. There's some real downsides to QuickBooks. But you're looking at $15,000 a year in subscription costs just for those products, to give you some idea of what you're looking at.
This is a long-term investment if we do it for efficiencies, and it just gets to a point you got to get into the 21st century and really implement things that make you work better. It's just the way it is. But we'll figure it out if that's worth a while or not.
That's correct.
Once we put out this request for proposals or qualifications.
Exactly. And the other thing you have to think about when we look at this, will this system be functional today? Yeah, we can get by today. So Paula brings in new business. They're an international customer. We need foreign currency. Will the product work then?
No.
I don't have that answer, but that's what we have to, that's what I'm trying
things
to
look at.
anticipate.
Good.
Good questions, good answers. I guess we're at the Director of Operations report.
All right, so main 2 points I think that will probably stick out here is on, everybody wants to know what the status is on the grant. Obviously, so I usually check back at the EDA about the second or third week of the month. I talked to him this month. He said that it's still in legal review and that he expected we wouldn't hear anything back until the end of November at the earliest, he said, which is definitely different than what they told me last month. He said there's a possibility there could be some delay in awarding the funds. It just depends on how the ruling comes out. So the main point that I wanted to get through to him was that we have to do this work during the in-water construction period, and that's to be in compliance with the Endangered Species Act. And like I said before, that they sometimes haven't demonstrated a great deal of working knowledge of those type of requirements. Made sure they're clear on that. That's the best I can do for now. So we're still waiting to hear an answer for sure from them. The other one is on the stormwater, the stormwater outfall that's collapsed over here in South Beach. After talking to a couple people at different ports and a couple project managers, I think previously I thought, well, let's go ahead and get a contract in place pending the permits. And I think the consensus is that we should get the permits first. And I don't want to delay in getting the permits anyway because it's going to take some time. We're going to have to do a consultation with NIMS on this particular project, unfortunately, which is going to take a little bit. I was just talking with our consultant today about we need to make sure that we can do whatever we possibly can to get it done as fast as we can. So we're doing everything we can to get the permits in place so that we can get the thing fixed. It's just, and like I said, the emergency button is always something I'd like to be able to lean on. They are very particular about lack of planning versus emergencies. And so we'll do our best to try and get it taken care of. One thing I didn't mention in the reports, I attended this Cascades West Economic Development District meeting to discuss an update on the comprehensive economic development strategy. I provided some written comments back to them and copied Paula on that. I think there's some opportunity in particular on goal number 6. As this came, they by the way, they did hold up our Port Doc 5 peer grant request as a good example of proper use of the comprehensive economic development strategy. That strategy is used to point federal investments in what direction they go for projects when it's sort of their guidelines for awarding grants in infrastructure and business. So like I pointed out to them, it's not really all I did was follow the instructions in the grant, and one of the check mark items was did the applicant use the comprehensive economic development strategy, and that's what pointed me toward their goals in that. And so I had recently actually gone through these things pretty extensively, so I was pretty familiar with them. I think there's some room in goal 6, which pertains to rural communities that we might be able to get some improvements that would help out the port. And having said that, it benefits the port, but it really benefits the economic district, because if you read the way that it's written, it's the way that a landsman views the world is different than somebody who spends a lot of time on the ocean. And it's very much about getting all of the valuable resources in the urban centers out to the disadvantaged rural communities. And I think that what we bring as a member of the economic district is that we bring the vast resources from the ocean into those urban centers. And so if we can get investment in projects that either advantage business or infrastructure in the process of doing that, it helps everybody. And so I think they need to turn their thinking just a little bit more toward the ocean and really recognize how our economic development district as a coastal district is advantaged by our location, and get more investment out here to bring those resources in, instead of viewing us as somebody that needs help to be brought up to the inland standard. So there's some work I think that can be done in that regard. And I got filled out a WAM survey, which is the thing the Coast Guard does every few years. Waterways Analysis and Management System has to do with whether or not the aids to navigation that are currently in your system are up to par. There's a meeting coming up on November the 13th. It's open to the public. Anybody who wishes to make comments to the Coast Guard, who has ideas on ways that the federal navigation, aids to navigation, should be changed in the area. I didn't have. I've been a regular user of all the aids in this area, and I didn't have any comments on it. I didn't have any. It's stuff like, if you think that our range markers are inadequate, or if we had a sector light that you think is no good and should be changed to range boards instead, or if you think that we should have a marker at the south jetty, which we now do. That's been a change that's been made in the last decade or so. Those are the types of things that come out of these. So if anybody's interested in attending that and providing input, it's the 13th of November, 5 to 7 p.m. at England Marine. And I'd be happy to answer any questions anybody has.
I know we just did the NOAA dredging. Is there going to be a survey anytime this winter to see how that dredging is held?
Yeah, January. I wanted to give it a little bit of time to let some runoff, come through the area. So I think January is when we're going to be doing that.
Okay. And then the storm sewer collapsing, that we are categorizing that as an emergency.
Yeah.
Okay.
I just don't we can say it's an emergency. I don't know if they're going to make the changes for us. We just have to wait and see what they say.
Okay.
Yeah, we're hoping that the fact that we could have a oil thing collapsing, into it if we don't fix the problem as part of the emergency. So we're using that because it certainly fits into that
Environmental.
category.
You would think it would definitely make the situation worse, right?
Yeah.
Right.
I would think that they would take that into account.
No, we categorize it correctly.
It's like when a fisherman started Rondy's Ink field on fire, and one of our crew called the fire department, and they're like, "Where is this again? It's heading for that big tank out by the..." So a little impetus to get things done. But any more questions on operations? So we're down to general manager report, Paula.
Yeah, I'll try to be quick. As you can see here, we're moving forward with the NOAA as you approve us to move forward with that. We did make the selection of Baird as our as a company, the funding company. And we're moving forward with that. I think as of right now, we are scheduled to have this get finalized and closed sometime the second week of December. So, and then we know for sure how much savings. Right now, we're estimating somewhere around 3.4 million for NOAA and about 1.3 for the rural bond. So again, this is great savings for the port and something we can start putting aside to address again, you know, whatever things we have, but we're focusing mostly in having ways to apply for grants for some of the opportunities to address a lot of the dock improvements we need here where we didn't have match funds. So hopefully that can be used as some of the match funds. We are definitely, we have been working a lot on this salary survey and trying to come up with ways to address some of the deficiency. There's definitely a deficiency there, and the money is allocated for this year doesn't even touch where we need to go, to be quite frank. So the three of us have been really working hard on coming up with what we should do for this year, but not only that, but for next year, what we're going to come back to you and ask for. And so we'll probably have a number pretty soon here of what we feel like it should be an adequate number to bring things up to par. And we're looking at everything from when people started, where they are, there's the minimum, the midpoint, and maximum, and how long they've been here, and which ones are primary folks that we don't want to lose, and we could if we don't address some of those issues, or areas that we really are deficient in trying to recruit people. When we're trying to get folks, we can't get anyone because we just don't have the salary range that supports that. The turnover can be quite expensive for the port, and we got to take that into consideration. So we're really trying to address that right now, and not only that, but trying to make sure we have the skills that we need. There are a lot of skills necessary that we find that we're a little bit deficient. With that, we have been sending a lot of people to training, and we'll continue doing that. We do have some budget for training that hasn't been very well utilized, but I'm putting that to the test because I definitely want to make sure that people know what they're doing. And not only that, but that people stay. Some of those folks that have gone to some of those trainings, I mean, some of them have come to me and thanked me for, the fact that they were able to do things that they didn't realize we didn't know that, what we're doing in that. And here we are, learning now. I feel comfortable in addressing issues. So that's good. So we're trying to definitely.
Paul, can I ask a question?
Mm-hmm.
So on those, I'm trying to make sure I understand the salary surveys. Is this mandated by state or federal government, or is it a market survey to make sure that your staff and folks are competitive and paid well enough to stay here and do an excellent job working?
Yeah, I believe the state right now has a requirement that all agencies pretty much do a survey they call it equity survey, a pay equity. It's a pay equity. It's actually due, I think, by February, and so we're ahead. But we would like to be able to implement. One of the things I need to call the SDOH folks to understand a little bit more how that applies if you were talking equity, just men and women, and all that, or are we talking about for the region, if this is what they're saying, you should be paying folks minimum that at least that is being addressed. So that's the part we're not 100% sure, and we'll be calling them to have a better understanding of the law and how to apply. But either way, we're still trying to make sure that we are at least at that minimum amount to get the surveyor coming up. What we did before we did the survey is we came up with the descriptions for each one of the positions that we have within the port. So they could come up with that and compare us with similar type jobs, you know, for those, for the salary surveys. So yeah, there's still a little bit of understanding there that we're trying to have in terms of what the law requires, but either way, I think we're definitely on the low side, especially when it comes to the minimum.
So then, it might be useful when reporting back to us to do this in two steps. One is what meets the requirements of the law
Yeah.
in terms of equity and others. Two, what is your overall recommendation in terms of making this port successful and keeping a good workforce?
Sure.
It'd be good to see those two broken down differently, so we can see your thinking on both of those.
Absolutely, and those are not always the same.
No, I
I'm
understand.
finding out.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying.
Even if we make to the minimum, and Aaron knows that very well, we're still having a hard time recruiting some folks, even if we stay at the minimum of certain positions.
No,
So-
exactly.
Yeah, so we'll have a recommendation and make sure you understand what the law requires.
Have you had discussions if you end up having to raise some salaries, would there be places where you find that money to offset?
We actually had a lot of discussion about that because there are some services that we're doing, especially on the commercial marina side, where that tends to be one area that we're, again, having a hard time recruiting folks and where we need the most skillful people. And because of a lot of the services we have acquired in the past year or so, there are additional funds that have come to the port for that. So we figure that with some of those services, we should be able to make sense of that increase, hopefully, that we need at this point. But we're definitely looking at that, for sure. And I think there is an overall efficiency in many aspects of the port. We're looking into it, in which, again, can raise some of the funds, and not only first of all, making sure we are collecting late fees and all that. All those type of things can help, put us in a position where we are being a little bit more efficient in how we do work, and increase our funds where we can commensurate that with the salaries that we are increasing. So,
Are there any grant opportunities from workforce groups that want to, being a crane operator or a forklift operator is a desirable thing, that you would get initial training on that port situation?
we have to look into that. There are from time to time, I know for certain kind of trainings, as a matter of fact, there are some general HR training, that I say is more how people can work with each other type trainings that the Ford Foundation are usually willing to pay for some of those type of trainings. I'm not
Right.
sure for specific skills, but it's something we can look at.
And the fact that we're rural.
True, the possibilities that USDA could have. It's just something we're running into right now that we're realizing that is needed, but certainly something we should be looking at. Often there are training funds for things like that, so we'll definitely look into that. Okay, so moving on. I did, as I said on my report, spend quite a bit of time there. This seems to be the month that has the most conferences. October is like everybody at this time, but a lot of those are quite important to, not networking wise, but also informational wise. So again, I have until the PNWA, the Pacific Northwest Waterways Association, the Oregon Public Ports Association. Yes, this weekend, Sunday and Monday, the Infrastructure Summit put up by the Business Oregon is their first infrastructure summit. I believe they're going to continue doing that. Next week, I have the Oregon Economic Association conference. And then there is also a fly-in, fly-out from Association of Pacific Ports. It's one-day thing on Friday of next week that is specific on Oregon infrastructure finance. And we certainly, Mark and I go into that because we're looking for every form. And there will be someone from MARAD there, so that's the maritime folks that provide grants for things like our docks. So, yeah, so we're very busy with those things. Still meeting a lot of folks as I can. I have actually set up an appointment with one of those prospects to look into using the terminal, still looking at that. Also, I've been talking to the folks about cruise opportunities. Apparently there's a new boat similar to the one that goes into Columbia that is being built right now that is supposed to be going to Alaska and other places. So I'm trying to get those folks down here to look at the new port, see if there's any opportunity there. And a lot of PR stuff, a lot of media talk. I don't know if you have any questions about my schedule or anything else I have here.
Looks like you're staying busy.
Right?
And you did get on National Public Radio, which is national.
Here. I had one interview conversation on the phone, and all of a sudden I went to meet with the Aquina Bay managers, and you were in NPR. I'm like, was I? It was like 2 hours earlier. So anyway,
I heard it.
Did you?
I woke up to your voice in my alarm radio.
Pretty cool.
anyway, so.
Thank you for that. Do we have any more questions for Paula? No? Well, thanks again for everybody's input this evening. And so that takes us to commissioner reports or comments. Walter?
Okay, yeah, I've got a couple. So on the 27th of September, BOEM had their first meeting up in Portland on wind energy. I did not drive to Portland to hear the task force, but I did listen in, and basically it was just setting up shop. There wasn't a lot. But what was circulated, that our congressionals did send a letter regarding having port commissioners on there. And I've had some subsequent conversations with the people from BOEM, and they said, well, you need to be elected officials. And I said, I'm elected. So I think that they're a little bit reluctant to expand the task force, but I told them, and I told John Serra was there. I was talking with him the other day at the OPEC meeting, but told him that it's very important that someone from the ports gets on that task force. Because we do have a lot of interest, whether it's shipping some of those things out of here, but also impacts to shipping lanes and also to stuff that's already going on out there, whether it's fishing, recreating, or anything. There was one study that they showed where they contracted out there, and they basically put the five spots out there, and 3 of them right in the middle of shipping lanes and 2 of them right in the middle of prime fishing grounds. And so I asked, I'll go in later, but I asked if they had done any prior knowledge out there. No, we just contracted out where were the best spots to be. And what we need to be concerned about, and why I think that we need to push a little harder to get people from ports on there, is there's only 2 times that we can impact this process, and that's at the beginning during the planning process, which they don't want to do any planning, or at the end to be part of the EIS. And they can get an unsolicited offer basically where someone says, I want to buy this 100 square mile, lease this 100 square miles. And then they said, okay, it's your lease. And then it's up to whoever's using it to say that they've been there first. But it's really hard after they've already leased it. So that was it. PNWA went with Paula. Congratulations on being part of the board. Don Mann got an award. It's always a great time to network. John Serra was there. There was someone from Merkley's office. Jessica Keys was there, the natural resource person. So it's a good time to see these people there and network with them when they're not when they're in the official capacity, but they're not with their person, and talk with them. And had a good talk with John about the EDA grant with Paula, and kind of found some stuff out that Aaron found out. And then OPAC meeting, we had the BOEM officials there. I basically read them the same thing. Thanks for attending, Gil, and great presentation on aquaculture. And Jim, it was pretty eye-opening for you when you heard from them, wasn't it?
Yeah, I kind of knew it was coming a little bit from previous conversations, but that is from nothing for 5 years to
Yeah.
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 And then
it
we
could
talked,
happen.
whale entanglement was a big issue. That's going to be a big issue for the crab fleet. Washington, yes. Oregon, not as much, but California. But we're all in it together. And then I was elected the new chair of OPAC.
Yeah, congratulations.
And that's my report.
I left before that happened.
Yeah, that was in the morning.
Oh, I got there after that.
Yeah.
happened. Yeah. I was there
You missed
specifically for the meeting.
you missed the coronation.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Walter.
You're welcome.
Any other commissioner reports or comments?
Mine was mostly covered by Walter.
Okay.
Yeah. I did get to attend the BOEM meeting and the ODFW meeting and part of Gil's presentation, so they were all really valuable.
Yeah.
Just to echo Walter's comments on BOEM and the wind energy, that's a huge deal. I've heard comments more than once from people saying it's a big ocean as far as we can fish somewhere else, but it doesn't work that way. They don't understand that. We need input so they understand how things impact us. So that's going to be a huge issue moving forward. So I don't know anything else.
Just two quick comments. So I went to the Oregon Public Ports Association annual conference with Paula. It's part of my initiation. And I think the thing I learned was just how amazingly similar and different ports are. Right? They're similar in the sense of they operate in terms of how it's their broad operational scale, the kind of people they have to work with. But man, the nature of the problems that they face are incredibly diverse depending on what. So it really opened my eyes. So it's good. I really enjoyed this meeting. And then on the aquaculture, so one thing about aquaculture, I'm doing a large aquaculture project for the state for economic, and that's why one reason I was reporting OPAC, because we've done a lot of work on aquaculture. But I know it's been an issue mentioned for this port, other opportunities for aquaculture. And so as we work through this, I'll give maybe a report once in a while to talk about possible aquaculture opportunities that the port might think about as we work through this, including pump ashore systems, but other types of systems. So we'll have this project completed by the end of next year, and then we can report back out what this report looks like. In terms of it's a combined GIS system and a financial analysis system for the state. We're trying to connect the two together. So you can select an area of the state and get a GIS report on key data and issues associated with trying to invest in rural aquaculture. This would be both in the estuaries and the terrestrial landscape. Right now, we're staying away from offshore only because primarily it's politically super sensitive. It's like it is for wind energy or any other thing else. There are a lot of complex issues politically. And hopefully we'll end all of that with a conference at the end of that work in order to see if we can attract investment in aquaculture this day. So that's our hope. And I'll maybe within a year, give you a report about how that project's going. Make sure if any of you are interested, invite to the conference.
And we
Great.
haven't mentioned that yet because it's still in the beginning stages, but Aaron and I have been working with someone about oyster farms and things like that. So there are some business we're trying to figure out if it's going to work or not, and how to proceed the permits, and but we'll bring that to you later on once we have a better feel for it.
Well, what a broad base of talented people here. I felt like I needed to make a report of some kind, but no, it's great that we all are active in what we do and certainly care about the port and bring it to bear here to make it better. So good for us. So that brings us to calendar future considerations. It's all there for your reading enjoyment. Next November regular meeting is the 19th, and then we'll be adding the 20th as a work session. December meeting is 17th, so both have been moved up a little bit because of the holidays, and that brings us to public comment. Any public comments out there?
Just want to share a couple things.
Could you state your name?
Steve Rich, our city attorney, he just passed away recently.
Oh my.
So we're not on the hunt. He was sick for quite a while,
Oh,
and he
sorry.
went home to Medford. But he was the city attorney for about 5 years. Before that, we contracted with that service, and now we're in the process of trying to figure out which way to go, contractor or in-house, and I think we're looking for it. The other thing is Judy Bateman, do you know her?
Pardon?
Bateman?
Judy Bateman?
Yeah, she passed away also.
Oh, goodness.
So Jean and the Batemans are pretty well next generation taking over. I thought that was just for information.
Local folks, for sure. Well, thank you for that, Dietmar. Nothing else? I guess we will adjourn the meeting at 6 after 8.